When I was 6 years old, I broke my leg. And I was running from my brother and his friends, and tasted the sweet perfume of the mountain grass I rolled down. I was younger then. Take me back to when I found my heart, broke it here, made friends and lost them through the years. And I've not seen the boring fields in so long. I know I've grown, but I can't wait to go home. I'm on my way, driving at 90 down those country lanes, singing to Tiny Dancer, and I miss the way you make me feel. It's real. We watch the sunset over the castle on the hill. 15 years old and smoking hand-rolled cigarettes, running from the law through the backfields and getting drunk with my friends. Had my first kiss on a Friday night. I don't reckon that I did it right, but I was younger then. Take me back to when we found weekend jobs, and when we got paid, we'd buy cheap spirits and drink them straight. Me and my friends have not thrown up in so long. Oh, how we've grown, but I can't wait to go home. I'm on my way, driving at 90 down those country lanes, singing to Tiny Dancer, and I miss the way you make me feel. It's real. We watch the sunset over the castle on the hill. Over the castle on the hill. Over the castle on the hill.
Hello, graduates. Good afternoon and welcome to our annual All Graduates Assembly. My name is Kate Treitman Brown, and I'm here to welcome you on behalf of the Office of Graduate Affairs and on behalf of Nobles. Thank you for spending some time with us this week at our virtual reunion. And I'm going to quickly just turn it over to Kathy Hall to get things started. Thanks so much for being here.
Good afternoon, Nobles graduates. To echo Kate's sentiments, just so thrilled you're joining us. And thank you for reflecting. Last year, when we did this virtually the first time, we had a bit of a captive audience. I was remembering that was when no one had anywhere to go. And I know things are finally getting busier. And while we can't have you on campus, just so glad you're able to take some time to join us virtually today. I sure wish we were together right now in our beloved Lawrence Auditorium, but just so glad that we can join together still and reconnect to Nobles. I have no doubt that there's many of you here today who would not be able to come in person, and that certainly is a silver lining. This year certainly has been one for the ages, surreal in many ways, challenging in others, and inspiring in many. So last summer, amidst what was a cacophony of noise and worry and confusion, it became very clear to me that we needed to center around a few key principles to guide us. Principles that were most important during what was clearly a very tumultuous and uncertain time, and I knew without question it would continue to be through the year. So these three principles that I honed in on, they might seem simple, but they became incredibly important anchors and drumbeat for us. The first, health and safety. The second, equity of access to our program. And the third, meeting people where they are, where they feel safe and supported. These principles enabled us to safely open in the fall, to stay open all year without a single day of unplanned virtual time, where campus spread, and to now fully have been reopened the last few weeks. So while we've had a year of conflicting and sometimes confusing guidelines, we've stuck with the gold standard every step of the way. Adapting as new research has taught us what is and is not the best way to stay safe. We're really proud of how safely and well our year has gone, given the mountains that were in front of us last summer. Weekly COVID testing has certainly been a key part of our routine this year. It's been assuring us our systems are working and allowing us to keep putting one foot in front of the other. The vaccine ultimately became our path back to a full on-campus reopening. Once we knew for sure all of our adults in our community could gain access to the vaccine, and that's our faculty and staff, as well as the at-risk adults in our students' lives, we very excitedly reopened campus to all students full-time on April 26th. These last several weeks, honestly, have just been really fun, and it's nice to have some fun. April 26th felt like the first day of school. There was this nervous energy on campus, which was such a boost for all of us. And our students are definitely tired coming back full time, which has been fun to also see. So what did we learn from this last year? Well, without question, this last year has reinforced a mantra that we say a lot, which is relationship before task. We know at Nobles that we're going to do great work. Our kids are amazingly aspirational and talented, but we can't get to that work if the relationships aren't there first. Our students need to know that they are seen, known, understood. They need to know the adults have a connectedness to them, not just in the classroom around the academics, but on the field and in the hallways and on the stage. Those relationships are so central. And of course, they've been really tested this last year. And we've had to get really creative about how to ensure they continue. And coming back in person full time obviously allows us to double down on that. Last spring, I had this moment of recognition as we kind of were thrust into quarantine and into this pandemic. You can draw on a community during a crisis, but you can't manufacture one on the fly. Having the strength of the Nobles community going into this has made all the difference. We've certainly drawn on that well over the last year, and I'm eager to reinvest in it and fill that back up. Third, there was this amazing flip that happened last spring. We often in schools will debate, should we innovate? How do we innovate? What's the pace of change? Well, all of a sudden it wasn't, should we innovate, but how do we innovate? Our teachers knew if we did not figure out immediately how to deliver programming that was so out of our toolkit and out of our box, we wouldn't be able to meet our students. So it was a roll up our sleeves moment. And we realized that we could do that and do it pretty well. There certainly was a lot that we learned about how to use time. In schools, we tend to talk a lot about time, and changing schedules can take years to pull off. And yet we've changed our schedule now 3 times in the last year. So we've been able to learn a lot about how time can work for us, against us, how space can be used differently. And that's really exciting. That's going to inform a lot of our work ahead and create a lot of agility. We've learned how not just to use time, but also how to use space and technology, how we think about assessments differently. How do we deal with students that might have long-term absences? We now know we have ways to keep those students connected and engaged. We also learned pretty quickly last spring that virtual afternoon program doesn't work very well. We really came out of last spring going, we need to figure out where our afternoon program can be in person in any way possible. And it's of course the activities themselves lend themselves to being present, but our afternoon program is so much about the power of team, whether that team is a sport or a theater group or a music group. It's about team, and the team comes together in person in ways that are really unique. And so we really invested a lot this year in getting very creative and working very hard around the edges to keep those teams going. And that's been a really big part of our year's success. Of course, this spring, now that we're back, our afternoon program is back full time. And I sure can feel the difference on how our students are feeling about their overall day and their connectedness to one another. Lastly, we learned that we can engage our parents and guardians and our graduates in really new ways. Virtual access has broadened our community in amazingly exponential ways for us. We were really concerned the last several years seeing on-campus attendance at events actually going down as our families are busier and busier and commutes are longer and longer. And so for us to have every other week town halls that I've been running since last spring, and I easily will get 200 to 300 parents and guardians every time. So we are trying to think of ways as we move forward. Yes, we want to get back to in-person. Of course, seeing our parents and guardians face-to-face, seeing our graduates face-to-face is so important. but recognizing those who can't otherwise connect into Nobles unless it's virtual. How do we do the both and? How do we find ways to create equity of access and a more inclusive experience for all, leveraging what we've learned? On the business front, we have just been so fortunate. Our school is thriving. Last spring, there was just these huge question marks about what the next year would bring and a lot of anxiety about our budget, about unexpected costs, about admissions, about fundraising. All of these things were these huge question marks. And we've had to get very creative. For sure, we've had to get very creative to make the budget work and to make sure we can continue to support our faculty and our students who need resources. This year's admissions was actually the most competitive on record, with among the lowest acceptance rates and the highest yield coming in, and certainly makes us very proud. For an admissions process that was almost entirely virtual, our admissions team just worked so hard to create an intimacy of experience and help folks who are choosing Nobles know what that means. On the financial side, as I said, there were some pretty steep challenges. We have over the last year had between kind of $2 and $3.5 million in COVID costs. Of course, at nonprofits, we do our budget like the January before. So January 2020, we were not thinking about $3 million in COVID costs. $1.4 million of that was for COVID testing, which we've done weekly and has been such an important part of our safe reopening. But again, these are pretty big challenges you weren't expecting. Of course, with our annual Nobles Fund, which is such an important part of our budget and our ability to offset the need to raise higher tuition, not knowing what that would look like this year and recognizing across our community, while there's some who are thriving financially, there are some who are incredibly hard hit. Our small business owners and others who rely on monthly income for businesses that can't operate. So we couldn't do our annual Nobles Fund the same way, of course not. We needed to be sensitive to where our community would be. And yet we also knew we needed those dollars to ensure that we could, looking forward, to continue to do our faculty, keep meeting our faculty where they need to be and supporting our financial aid budget. And our last big lever has been our day camp. We have an incredibly thriving Nobles Day Camp. I'm sure many of you participated. The Hall children love it. And of course, we couldn't do day camp the way we wanted to last year. And this year will be better, but not perfect. And that's a $1 million net revenue piece for us, which is a pretty big ticket item. So we've had to get creative and really work hard to make sure we're, again, meeting our community where they are, while ensuring we can keep the institution healthy and supporting our community. So looking ahead to next year, thank goodness we know and feel we'll be back full time. In fact, we think the fall will be significantly enhanced over the spring in terms of the guidelines and where those will be. It's going to be absolutely critical that we invest in our community next year like never before. As I said, we've been drawing on the tremendous well we've stored up, and now we need to start to fill it back up again. We're doing all we can this spring, but next year is all about reconnecting. We're not sure who will be fully vaccinated yet, but it certainly is trending in the right direction. We've reason to be hopeful that all in our community, the 12 and up crowd included, can be fully vaccinated by the start of school if they choose to be. We have no idea what that means in terms of mask wearing and distancing, and I'm sure the research, I'm really eager to hear these coming months. I have no doubt a lot of research around post-vaccine spread and the variants, and all of that will give us some really clear guidelines. But one of the things I'm so eager to do is to get back to in-person assembly. Among the things that don't work well is virtual assembly. We have stuck with it, continuing to have that ritual in our calendar and the shared time together. We have done it every single week since we went virtual, but it's not even close to the same. It's not the same as sitting in the same physical space, of actually watching the same thing, of knowing everyone's equally focused. Having our students on screens watching something, it's just, granted, it's better than not doing it, but we're so eager to get back together. Part of the new normal for us, of course, I hope, is welcoming all of you back to campus as we get back. So of course, we're focusing on that reconnection. And just as I reorganized a couple of times in this last year, last March, it was a reorganization on the fly to go a hybrid and do virtual Nobles in the spring. Last summer, I did a huge organizational pivot to restructure people's roles to say, how do we come back this fall? Well, I'm doing the same for this coming fall with a complete focus on reconnecting community, of course, getting back to normal on academics and all the things that people are so eager to get back to, what we know is our bread and butter in so many of those spaces, but not losing sight of just how different it's going to feel. There will be so many students who feel like new students, so many faculty who feel like new faculty, even those who've been here a long time, where just there's been a disruption to friendships. And how do we not lose sight of the opportunities in order to build upon that? From social activities to, we're actually going to have 2-day orientations for classes coming into the school year. We're going to be going big and bold on community connections, supporting students getting to know one another, engaging parents on campus, and just bringing the joy. Of course, reconnecting our community will also focus on our critical goals around equity and inclusion, ensuring every single member of the Nobles community is thriving and has equitable access to all aspects of the Nobles experience and feels a full sense of belonging. That's not some instead of others. It's not some at the expense of others. It's every member of our community. So while this is an incredibly challenging time in our country, likely the most difficult time ever to be a teacher, it's also an inspiring time. It's one where our mission of leadership for the public good has never been more important. How do we approach this incredibly important and difficult work around equity and inclusion in a way that also brings our community together rather than divides it in ways we are seeing play out across our country? Our students are surrounded by very broken models of civil discourse. Healthy models where debate and discussion elevate ideas have been replaced with a focus on tearing down ideas and one another, where disagreeing just means shouting louder and canceling one another in very public ways, rather than engaging in conversation with one another. So how do we help our students learn to debate with the goal of learning, not simply broadcasting? Ensuring we have safe spaces in our classrooms to disagree and to share ideas where conversations happen in person, rather than anonymous posts or petitions. Our goal is not to tell our students what to think, but to help them learn what they think, what they believe, and what leadership for the public good means to them. So we simply need to do things differently at Nobles, as we always have. We will focus on core principles to guide us, anchors that are rooted in how to share ideas, listen to ideas, and disagree with ideas in a way that promotes civil discourse, respect for self and others, and a focus on seeking to learn and understand as we strive to ensure every single member of our community is thriving. It's never been a more important time for Nobles to fulfill our mission. So heading into the pandemic, we were right on the cusp of long-range planning. I was in year 3 of my headship. It felt like just the right window, priorities were coming together, and then, of course, the world ground to a halt with the pandemic. The great news is those emerging priorities have only deepened and strengthened. They've only become clearer that they are where we're going to be looking ahead. So we are excited to embark upon long-range planning next year and hope it really is a tool and a vehicle for us to accomplish so much as we think about our path ahead. So the 3 major areas that I'm excited to be looking through very different lenses and thinking about some bold goals around. The first is around access and affordability. I believe this is a critical juncture for us to think boldly about how we can ensure we enroll every single student at Nobles that we choose and know will thrive here. This year in admissions, I mentioned what an amazing admissions year it was. Well, we also had a few dozen students that we initially admitted and then found we did not have money to support with financial aid, a few dozen. And that number is only growing each year. I believe this challenge is only going to grow more acute in the years ahead. I believe Nobles is uniquely equipped as a day school to be actually sector changing and are thinking about access and affordability. I don't know that there's another school across the country that has this moment in time to say, how can we crack this challenge differently? Ensure 20 years from now, we continue to be the school that enrolls the students that we know should be in our hallways, thriving across our campus. I look forward to thinking creatively and boldly in our long-range planning process about this. Our second key priority is around our students thriving. We're looking to have a deep investment in ensuring our students thrive, not just in their years at Nobles. Of course, that's a priority, but I'm thinking well beyond Nobles. In fact, I worry a lot less about Nobles students when they're with us than in the years that follow. The data around adolescent mental health is frightening. I'm sure if you're looking at any of the data out of higher ed and any of the younger teenage data around anxiety and depression and suicidal ideation, the statistics have been on a trajectory that's really scary. A lot of the time the shift goes to, well, we need to kind of bubble wrap our students and insulate them from anything that might cause stress. And I do not believe that is the answer. In fact, I believe strongly that smart rigor and student wellness can and should go hand in hand. Now, smart rigor means that we make sure rigor isn't load or volume. It means that we're interrogating our academic schedule and homework and assessments to be sure they're best supporting student learning. But it doesn't mean we're just making things easier. Smart rigor should be hard, but it's hard in a way that's intellectually curious and promotes a love of learning. Bubble wrapping our kids or pulling off on smart rigor isn't good in the short or the long term for our students. What I do believe makes the difference is equipping our students with the toolkit they need to thrive. We need to help them learn to fail safely, to know when and how to ask for help when they're struggling, to develop habits of self-care. We need to ensure our students have the skills and confidence so they, of course, thrive when they're here, that we know decades after graduation, they're still drawing on that toolkit. We have some really creative ideas to think about how we structure and organize around that effort, where smart rigor and wellness are going hand in hand. I'm really excited about this effort. The third category, or third strategy that we're really diving in on, is around our faculty thriving. Core to the Nobles experience, of course, has been the relationships that students forge with faculty. The tenure of our faculty is simply extraordinary. We have a long history of faculty spending their careers at Nobles, continuing to stay connected with our graduates long after graduation. I have no doubt in your different class reunions, you're having many of these faculty drop in who have been here for 20, 30, 40 plus years. What also differentiates our faculty is how they invest in the lives of our students. They're not just in the classroom, but they're on the athletic field, watching performances, advising, walking hallways. They're everywhere. As the push to specialize on all fronts has grown, many schools have thrown in the towel on the multifaceted educator model. It simply seems easier to hire outside coaches or to pull off on what you're asking faculty to do so that you don't lose people. I actually feel strongly that we need to double down on the teacher coach advisor model. How can Nobles continue to be a place where the young faculty member I hire today is here in 40 years? I'm sure you know the cost of living in the Boston area is just exorbitant and only getting more expensive by the day. Imagine a new teacher making somewhere in the mid 50s for a salary. It's simply impossible to afford even a small bedroom apartment anywhere near campus. With limited on-campus housing, we're increasingly struggling to best support faculty's ability to afford to be here. So looking at this very creatively, investing in our faculty thriving, ultimately, of course, is also investing in our students thriving. I'm really excited by our ability to finally roll up our sleeves and get to this work, and hopefully to move past a lot of what has been a pretty regular crisis management over the last 18 months. But this is work that's going to be really exciting, and I hope draws all of you in. And if you have any thoughts on anything I've shared, questions you have, again, the webinar where I don't see your faces is not ideal. I welcome an opportunity for a one-on-one talk anytime. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm thrilled to now begin our tradition of honoring our graduates with the 2021 Graduate Awards. First, I'm very happy to turn things over to Jill Walsh from the class of 96, who on behalf of the class of 96 will be presenting the Coggeshall Award to John Gifford. Thank you, Jill.
The Coggeshall Award was established by the class of 1962 at their 25th reunion to honor a member of the extended Nobles community who served the school and was of particular importance to the current 25th reunion class while they were at Nobles. On behalf of the class of 1996, I am thrilled to present the Coggeshall Award to John Gifford. John personifies everything that is good about Nobles. He is kind, funny, and always willing to play any role in support of the institution. And I mean that truly because I think John has had about 90% of the jobs that Nobles offers in his time here. But in the 90s, John taught Spanish, ceramics, and photography. He coached football and crew, worked in the dorm, and served as an advisor. And Beth Riley reminded me that John also led the first Nobles trip to South Africa, which has become an enduring trip that helped to solidify global travel and community service at Nobles. Given the diversity of his roles and talents, he likely interacted with every student at Nobles in the mid-90s. Many of us, though, first got to know John when we came to the admissions office to interview, as he interviewed many of us, including me. And I can actually remember the interview quite clearly. John, who is totally unflappable and has the best resting, interested face that I've ever seen, managed to listen and nod while 8th grade me droned on about my interest in horses. Please know that I did not ride horses, nor did I have any expertise. I just liked them. John's skill at making people feel welcome and valued was evident that day because in spite of the fact that I talked his ear off about something I didn't even do, I left the interview thinking, I nailed it. And yes, I recognize that the Nobles admissions process has changed quite a bit in the last 25 years, but I really do appreciate my teen confidence. But what I and so many of my classmates remember about John in those years was both his humor and his tremendous kindness. Members of the 96 committee gave me a list of superlatives to describe John, and everyone included both of those words. And you know, when I say them out loud, he's so funny and nice, it kind of sounds like I'm describing someone fairly generically, but really it's quite the opposite. First, just the importance of both of those values at Nobles and beyond. Secondly, the fact that John marries those two qualities beautifully. His deadpan humor has made me truly guffaw at times, but his jokes are never biting or mean, and his kindness is legendary. In his quiet and unassuming way, he showed all of us in the class of 1996, and still shows current Noble students, the power of offering grace to others. John's kindness is the contagious kind. He makes you want to be a better person, to believe that you can be a better person, and that there are good people out there. John did that for our class, and we are forever grateful. And as a current parent and board member, I see also the deep care that John has for all current Noble students, and his keen understanding and appreciation for the quirks of adolescent development. Noble seeks to educate students who lead lives of service to others. John not only teaches that, but he has also modeled it for generations of Noble students. As a leader, mentor, teacher, and friend, John is a tremendous asset to Nobles, and I am so thrilled to honor him with this award. Congratulations, John.
Congratulations, John. I have to say, in addition to this great honor, which is so well deserved, last night, the class of 1986 honored John Gifford for his 30 years of service to Nobles, and they've dedicated their 35th reunion to their classmate, which was just awesome to witness and be a part of. Next, I'm happy to introduce Maya Getter, chair of the Young Graduate Committee, who will present the Young Graduate Award to the amazing Mariel Novas.
Hello, everyone, and happy reunion weekend. My name is Maya Getter, class of 2013. I serve as the chair of the Young Graduate Committee, and I'm excited to present our 2020 Young Graduate Award recipient to the Nobles community this afternoon. Created in 2011, this award is given annually to a graduate from the last 15 years who models the spirit and values of Noble and Greenough School as set forth in its mission statement. Through professional, academic, and/or volunteer roles, the recipient has demonstrated leadership for the public good and a commitment to serving others. Although many of us heard Mariel speak on Wednesday night, and if you didn't, the recording is available on the reunion website, I am thrilled to officially present the 2020 Young Graduate Award to Dr. Mariel Novas. Mariel graduated from Nobles in 2006, where she was a senior prefect, the president of MSA, and a middle school mentor. After Nobles, she received a BA in History, Ethnicity, Race, and Migration from Yale, then went on to Boston University for a master's in curriculum and teaching. In 2020, Mariel earned a doctorate in education leadership from the Harvard Graduate School of Education. While Mariel graduated from Nobles 15 years ago, she has remained extremely active as a graduate, including serving on the Board of Trustees from 2014 to 2017. For her contributions to the field of education and racial justice through community empowerment, we are excited to honor Mariel, this year's recipient of the Young Graduate Award. An immigrant from the Dominican Republic who was both a student and later a teacher in the Boston Public Schools, Mariel is an education advocate who promotes racial healing and education justice through people, power, and community organizing. As Director of Partnerships and Engagement for Massachusetts at the Education Trust, she convened the Massachusetts Education Equity Partnership, a state coalition of civil rights, social justice, and education advocates who advance educational and racial equity in historically underserved communities across the Commonwealth. Prior to joining EdTrust, she launched the homegrown program at Teach for America, Massachusetts, was a community organizer and co-founder of the Boston Education Action Network, and a middle school math teacher and Dorchester to newcomers from Latin America. In 2018, Mariel was selected as a recipient of El Mundo Boston's Latino 30 Under 30 Award. She enjoys singing bachatas loudly in her car and believes in nature therapy. Mariel, congratulations and thank you for all that you do. We cannot wait to see what's next.
As Maya mentioned, I was so privileged on Wednesday night to interview Mariel to kick off our reunion programming. She is simply extraordinary. And if you've not heard her speak before, I really do encourage you to watch that recording. I now have the honor of presenting this year's Lawson Service Award. The Lawson Service Award recognizes a graduate who has given the greatest service and effort to Noble's projects, activities, and/or organizations. This year's Lawson Service Award goes to Elliot Pratt from the class of 1976. Elliot has been a tremendous volunteer for Nobles for decades. Elliot is a graduate you know will show up for everything and anything that supports the school. Elliot is a true leader for this class in both fundraising and engagement, and a leader for the school in so many ways, most recently as a graduate trustee. Elliot's love for the school and eagerness to support our mission and program is inspiring and contagious. He answers every call. He gives advice to graduates from all classes and supports and participates in graduate events wherever and whenever he can. He's an absolute staple of the Nobles Milton graduate soccer game. Elliot's service to Nobles is broad and deep. In addition to work on the Board of Trustees, he's participated on the Graduate Council Advisory, our most recent campaign committee, the annual Nobles Fund Nucleus Committee, and most, if not all, of his class reunion committees. He's been a class agent for many years and serves as a magnet that draws his classmates back to Nobles. Whether he's helping as a phone-a-thon caller or serving on a committee, he supports the Nobles community with both warmth and enthusiasm. I am personally just so grateful for Elliot's tireless efforts to support Nobles with decades of extraordinary service. I'm thrilled to present Elliot Pratt with the 2021 Lawson Service Award. I also have to note, I see there are lots of Pratts in the audience, and I'm so thrilled that you've got a good cheering section for you today, which you very much deserve. And thank you again for all that you've done for Nobles. Next, I'm excited to do another annual tradition, which is having members of the 50th reunion class lead the Putnam reading. I'm happy to now introduce Ed Newhook and Harry Blackman, both from the class of 1971.
As some of you know, Elliot Putnam began every morning assembly with a reading from a book he carried with him into the study hall. Some of us later learned that he had inherited that book and this way of beginning the school day from his predecessor as headmaster, Charles Wiggins. The readings were clearly chosen more for their educational merit rather than any entertainment value, although one stands out in that latter regard, and that has been read frequently in recent years at this graduates assembly, was Casey at the Bat. All the students would stand in honor of Mr. Putnam's reading of that epic poem. Graduates from both headmasters' eras remember some of the same readings. Other than Casey at the Bat, three that stand out in most grads' memories are the one about tall gentlemen helping somebody, Robert Frost's poem, The Road Not Taken, and Rudyard Kipling's poem, If.
We have chosen to read the latter. Well, sort of. Kipling addressed that poem to his son. In many ways, it is a classic Victorian take on what it means to be a man. Many of us who annually heard that poem read took it to heart as a guide on how to live our lives and remember its power to this day. However, the school in those days was all male, and the gender-specific nature of the poem was not an issue. However, given Nobles as it is today, the poem as written does seem a little out of place. But at the same time, its core message does still speak to us today. What to do? Well, we happen to find a poem that's based on Kipling's If, written by the American poet Alice Kinsella for International Women's Day in 2017. And with minor alterations, we thought it perfect for this assembly. We also think that those of you who remember the Kipling poem will recognize it in this new telling. It is titled, When.
When you can say the words that are not listened to, but keep on saying them because you know they're true. When you can trust yourself when all others doubt you and do your best to make old words new. When you can wait and know you'll keep on waiting, that you'll be lied to but not sink to telling lies. When you know that you might hate, but not be consumed by hating, and know that beauty doesn't contradict the wise.
When you can dream and know you have no master. When you can think and those thoughts drive your aim. When you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same. When you hear every trembling word you've spoken retold as lies from a dishonest heart, when you have had your life, your body broken, but stop, breathe, and rebuild yourself right from the start.
When you can move on, but not forget your beginnings and do what's right no matter what the cost. Lose all you've worked for, forget the aim of winning, and learn to find the victory in your loss. When you can see the have-not struggle to create a legacy for after they are gone, and work with them when nothing else connects you except the fight in you which says, hold on.
When you can feel the weight of life within you, but know that you alone can be enough. When you know not to judge on some myth of virtue, to be discerning, but not too tough. When you know that you have to fight for every daughter, just as you fight for every son. When you know this, but still fill your days with laughter, you'll have the earth, and your best self will have won.
Thank you for that and for such a thoughtful explanation of sort of your evolution and looking to update that version. That was wonderful. So for the last 2 years, Senam Kumahia has served as the president of the Graduates Association. I want to sincerely thank Senam for his wonderful leadership over the last 2 years, which has also included serving on the board of trustees representing our Graduates Association. Senam has brought tremendous insights, wisdom, warmth, and experience to this critical leadership position, and I'm just very grateful. I look forward to welcoming Monica Stevenson, the class of 1990, as the incoming president, and Jessica Baylor from the class of 2004 as the incoming vice president of the Graduates Association, and to continuing to have such incredible graduates dedicate time and care to this important work and partnership. I'm now happy to turn the remainder of the program over to Senam. I very much look forward to seeing all of you, hopefully in person, very soon. Thank you, Senam.
Thank you so much, Kathy, and thank you to the graduate body. It has been an honor representing you over the past 2 years on the board and serving as a leader on the Graduates Council for the past 4 years. I am excited to pass this responsibility on to Monica Stevenson and Jessica Baylor, as Kathy mentioned. This has been a reunion like no other, but we hope that you've been able to enjoy some of the reunion programming and browse the on-demand items, including the recordings of the 2 Leading Forward events earlier this week. Traditionally in this assembly, we make sure to take a moment of silence to remember the graduates we have lost in the past year. Because we did not have a chance to do this as a community last year, we are sharing the names of the graduates we have lost in the past 2 years. If you would like to take a look at this list more carefully, you can find it on the reunion website. Now, I have the pleasure of announcing the newest elected trustee. This is a particularly meaningful moment for me because my own classmate, April Watson, will be joining the board. Thank you to all the graduates who voted. We had a record participation this year. It was a close race, and we're so grateful for JP and Lauren, who are also on the ballot. Lastly, I wish everyone well and hope you either enjoyed your class gathering if you already had it, or are looking forward to connecting with your classmates tonight. We are going to close this afternoon with some music, a performance from the class of 2020 that they arranged for their graduation last year. Once again, thank you for joining us for the first ever Nobles virtual reunion. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend and Mother's Day tomorrow. Thank you.
A long, long time ago. I can still remember how that music used to make me smile. And I knew if I had my chance that I could make those people dance, and maybe they'd be happy for a while. But February made me shiver with every paper I deliver. Bad news on the doorstep. I couldn't take one more step. I can't remember if I cried when I read about his widowed bride. Something touched me deep inside. The music died. So bye bye, Miss American Pie. Drove my Chevy to the levee, but the levee was dry. And them good old boys were drinking whiskey and rye, singing, "This'll be the day that I die. This'll be the day that I die." Did you write the book of love, and do you have faith in God above? If the Bible tells you so. And do you believe in rock and roll? Can music save your mortal soul? And can you teach me how to dance real slow?
Well, I know that you're in love with him, 'cause I saw you dancing in the gym. You both kicked off your shoes. Man, I dig those rhythm and blues. I was a lonely teenage rockin' buck with a pink carnation and a pickup truck. But I knew I was out of luck the day the music died. I started singing bye bye Miss American Pie. Drove my Chevy to the levee, but the levee was dry. And good old boys were drinking whiskey and rye, saying, "This'll be the day that I die. This'll be the day that I die."
Now for 10 years we've been on our own, and moss grows fat on a rolling stone. But that's not how it used to be. When the jester sang for the king and queen in a coat he borrowed from James Dean, and a voice that came from you and me.
Oh, and while the king was looking down, the jester stole his stony crown. The courtroom was adjourned. Now the verdict was returned. And while Lennon read a book on Marx, the quartet practiced in the park, and we sang dirges in the dark days.
Jack be nimble, Jack be quick, Jack Flash sat on a candlestick, 'cause fire is the devil's only friend.
Oh, and as I watched him on the stage, my hands were clenched in fists of rage. No angel born in hell break that Satan spell. Oh, as the flames climbed high into the night to light the sacrificial rite, I saw Satan laughing with delight the day the music died. He was singing bye bye Miss American Pie. Drove my Chevy to the levee, but the levee was dry. And good old boys were drinking whiskey and rye, singing, "This'll be the day that I die. This'll be the day that I die."
I met a girl who sang the blues, and I asked her for some happy news, but she just smiled and turned away. I went down to the sacred store where I'd heard the music years before, but the man there said the music wouldn't play. And in the streets the children screamed, the lovers cried, and the poets dreamed, but not a word was spoken. The church bells all were broken. And the three men I admire most, the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, they caught the last train for the coast the day the music died. And they were singing, "Bye, bye, Miss American Pie." Drove my Chevy to the levee, but the levee was dry. Them good old boys were drinking whiskey and rye, singing, "This'll be the day that I die. This'll be the day that I die." They were singing, "Bye, bye, Miss American Pie." Drove my Chevy to the levee, but the levee was dry. And good old boys were drinking whiskey and rye, singing, "This'll be the day that I